Is there such a thing as too much luck? Is there such a thing as too much fun? Messing around, wondering how it's taken so long. I'm really so strong. It's not too much at all.
Welcome to Too Much with Denise Love Hewett. We have a very special episode this week. It's one I've been wanting to do for a very long time, but even more exciting, it's with someone who I've known for a very long time. So it feels extra special to be a part of this part of your journey, Erin Claire Jones.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so glad we were able to make it happen.
Erin Claire Jones is one of the world's leading experts in human design. Through her coaching, content, and digital products, she's empowered hundreds of thousands of people to overcome their biggest obstacles and find their flow at work, in love, and in life. Her personalized guides have been purchased by customers in over 160 countries. She has spoken on stages across the world, and her work has been featured in Forbes, Elle, The Sunday Times, Vogue, Allure, Nylon, and more. Thanks for being here.
I'm so happy to be here.
And we're here because she has a book that is coming out.
Well, when this comes out, it'll be coming out tomorrow.
Woo! So I already read it. I got the sneak preview. I read it in like 48 hours.
No way.
I read like a book a week. I'm not well. It's not. I do no one should be doing what I'm doing.
That's amazing.
I love reading and I love
Yeah.
learning. And I feel like my biggest pre-therapy, like my biggest teachers were books.
Yeah. Books are amazing.
Yeah. And so just to give some context here before we dig into human design, I learned about human design probably almost a decade ago. I'm obviously a little bit woo-woo. I try a lot of different methodologies. I'm very open. And human design has been the one methodology that I keep going back to in a really meaningful way, but fundamentally changed my life. And so we're going to talk about the different types, and I'm a manifestor, which will make more sense in a second. But that's part of why it changed my life so much, because we live in a generator world, which in 2 minutes you'll understand what that means. And I was trying to be something that I'm not, and having the understanding of how I was meant to work gave me permission to start living a life in which I could be a better version of myself.
I love that. You know, human design does so many things, but I think one of the primary things it does is to give us permission to be ourselves in every part of our lives in a way that can feel very liberating.
Totally. So we're going to give everyone sort of the basic overview so they can catch up with us. And then Erin and I are going to go a little bit deeper because there's some things about my human design chart that really helped me as well that I want to give the audience a little bit of an understanding of. So why don't you kick us off with the main types?
So if y'all are new, and you probably maybe or maybe not have heard of it, human design is a system based on your time, date, and place of birth that reveals how you are wired to operate in every area of your life. And the first piece to look at is your type. It is such an important piece, and it's also just the first piece. There are 5 types, like you said: manifesting generators, projectors, reflectors, and manifestors. If y'all don't yet know your type, you can look it up at humandesignblueprint.com. If you don't know your exact time, use the closest approximate you know. So we'll start with the manifesting generators and generators. This makes up the majority of the population. This in no way makes them less unique because there's so much more nuance, as you know, underneath it. But at a high level, these are types that really have powerful energy to create and make things happen. When they feel genuinely excited by what they're doing, their energy is boundless. They can go, go, go. You know, ideal days for them are ones where they kind of wake up energized and excited, use up their energy throughout the day in ways that feel deeply satisfying, and they drop into bed delightfully spent. They're like, I left it all on the field and now I can rest well. I would say generators specifically often have a very kind of steadfast, committed energy that's really around mastery. They might really enjoy this step-by-step process of kind of bringing ideas to life. Manifesting generators have a bit more of like a multi-passionate, multi-dimensional energy. These are often my clients that are like, I'm a coach, also a lawyer, opening like a juice shop on the side. Like maybe I want to become a dance teacher. Like they just can't be contained. And yet so often they've been made to feel scattered or unfocused throughout their life when like that need for variety is so inherent to who they are. They're also incredibly fast. You know, manifesting generators can often be disappointed in the kind of comparatively low capacity or speed of other people, because they're expecting others to move as fast as them.
What I've noticed with mangens is that all my friends who are that type, whatever they decide to do just happens so quickly. I dream about being a generator. Just so everyone knows, like this is my dream to have boundless energy. It's
Yeah.
like unbelievable. But also when they set their mind to something, it just happens. And I've witnessed it so many times with great founder friends who start a company and it just takes off immediately, to other friends that create productions or immersive experiences. They decide to do something, it catches fire in the cultural consciousness. And it's really incredible to like be able to point to that success and then say, oh, they're a manifesting generator. And that's just how they work.
Crazy, right? And yet, so rarely have they given themselves permission to operate that way, you know? So human design can really give them that permission. But just like you said, like once the clarity is there, they are like such a powerhouse in making that thing happen. And it really can feel a little bit superhuman to the rest of us. So then we've got projectors in human design. Projectors are really here to be leaders, guides, teachers, advisors. They're so good at asking the right questions and really kind of offering really wise, powerful insight about other people. They're so attuned to others. They're really, really good at making others feel deeply seen and understood. They tend to love systems like human design, anything that kind of can help them better understand people because they already understand them so naturally. Their energy really ebbs and flows. So as projectors, a big lesson is really learning how to honor those ebbs and flows and allow space and rest and pause in their days and really kind of disentangle their worth from how hard they're working and how much they're doing. And as projectors, we do best when we're invited in, when we have people that kind of very clearly see our value and really invite us in to share it. Then we've got manifestors, that is you. We're getting down to rarer types now. Manifestors are just 8 to 9% of the population. Manifestors are really here to initiate. You know, you are really here to kind of kickstart new ideas, bring new ideas to life. I would say your gift is often kind of bringing ideas to life, but not necessarily in doing all the doing to keep the thing alive. And so manifestors sometimes have been made to feel like they're like, you know, not able to complete the things they start when like their starting is their gift. I would also say a core value for manifestors is freedom. The freedom to do what they want, when they want, how they want. So they don't do super well working for others if they're not kind of given control and some autonomy around their days and how they structure things. And their energy really ebbs and flows. You know, you might have days, weeks, hours where you're super on fire and very inspired, followed by days, weeks, hours where you really kind of got to be alone and rest and kind of wait for the next inspiration to surge up. So, you know, not trying to maintain consistent momentum. And I would say what is really unique for manifestors, I mean, it all is very unique, but it's around the fact that you're really meant to make the first move. A lot of us in human design are kind of meant to let life come to us and see what sparks us or see where we're invited in. And for you, it's actually just seeing kind of what urge arises within you and then to just trust yourself enough to follow it.
Thank you. A great summary. And so true. I went from being like a corporate employee to being an entrepreneur to then having a big career heartbreak in which my rest cycle between that and where I am now was like 3 years. It was really hard to go from having what I felt was a lot of inspiration and energy to move towards things and move fast to being in a place where I was like, I have absolutely nothing to give. But I would find in my tenure in corporate America, would start a job and be able to do so much and contribute so much. And then over time, my energy would flatline or my inspiration would flatline. And having shifted to having multiple projects at one time or doing freelance jobs to doing my own personal projects, it's a much better way of doing it because I can come in and add the most amount of value in a short amount of time and then go back to building my creative life in a way and a rhythm and a schedule that works for me.
Yeah. I love it. And just really like honoring your rhythm wherever you can. And again, not expecting obviously your rhythm to move like anyone else's rhythm. And I think for those of us that love manifestors, really paying attention to their cycles and honoring them, you know, giving them space when they're like, they need that space and also really honoring when they're in like a creative surge. My 7-month-old is a manifestor. So I'm loving, I know, I'm so excited. So it's been really fun, I would say, having that experience just as a mother to kind of watch her manifestor qualities begin to come to life even at such a young age.
My other friend just had a manifestor baby. She asked me to do her astrology chart when her baby was born. I said, no, we're doing her human design. And she has this manifestor baby. I'm so excited. I'm like, oh, I get to like be like a sensei to this amazing little baby. I was just like, let her be in her bigness and don't try and like quiet those emotions. And I was just like thinking about things that would have changed my understanding of myself. And I think one of the things that I don't know if this is like common for manifestors and you may not know, but one of the things that I've come to is as I've done more and more of my healing work, I can see how in the past, a lot of my initiating or the things that were, I guess, bolder caused more resistance. And then the more I did my healing work, I find now that it's a softer delivery. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think, and I'm curious if this is relevant. I know you know this, but part of being a manifestor is around keeping people in the loop. And this is often a very unnatural thing for manifestors to do, but often their temptation is to kind of go off and do things on their own and let people know afterwards. And people can often feel a lot of resistance when that happens. But when they just like give people a quick heads up out of kind of respect before they move, it often creates a lot more ease. So do you feel like any of it is related to your ability to communicate, or did it just feel like more the energy through which you were
The
initiating?
energy. I've always been a very good communicator. I think I've gotten even better as time has gone on, but I just feel like I would inform people all the time of what I was doing or working on. And I just think there was something about the energy that felt harder for people to digest, because I would think it'd be like, oh, like very clear, or I wasn't saying it in an abrasive way. I think that's what's hard for manifestors sometimes to understand, is that people are receiving us differently sometimes than we're perceiving ourselves.
And also manifestors are meant to be like a little bit provocative in their energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's interesting. I teach a lot of people how to share human design, and it's funny working with the manifestor coaches because they tend to structure their businesses in ways where they do one really intense session, then kind of like give them space. And often people can be like a little bit like, whoa, this just shook a lot of things up. And then they'll come back like a month later being like, that changed my life, And I tell a story in the book of the moment I launched my human design business, where I was like walking past, I was like going to a meeting with my boss, and I walked past a friend who's a manifestor. And like, she just was like, you have to leave now. You have to leave the job. It's time for you to do this full time. And I was just like, okay. And like, I went and like quit my job and like did the thing. But manifestor energy is just so impactful and so initiating and so provocative. And I think sometimes it can be a lot at first if people, don't recognize that, or maybe you're unwilling to receive that.
Yeah. I love that story.
And then they'll come back later and be like, thanks for changing my life.
Well, that's happened a lot. Everyone's like, that thing you said. And I was like, oh, didn't realize I was just, in conversation. We tell it like how it is, though. We're truthful.
Yeah, totally. And like there's an intensity to manifestors. I will say that I don't know whether you've experienced this, and you might have a different perspective because you are a manifestor, but when I meet people, the type that I often can sense the easiest is always a manifestor.
Same. I can see it now that I understand it more. I'm less intense and less rigid than I was at like 22. Like I would honestly think I'm Benjamin Buttoning. Was like this really bizarre, very intense 20-year-old. I've loosened up a bit, which is great, but I know I'm intense. Like in the scheme of humanity, I am a very intense person. Like that's like, it doesn't matter how much I chill out, I'm always going to be intense. We're opinionated, we're big personalities, and we go for what we want, right? So that by definition is more intense than people that just inherently, don't have the same sense of like fire or direction. We'll talk about how you recognize when you're out of alignment.
Yeah.
But that's been very helpful to me too, because anger is the expression of, okay, something's maybe a little bit out of alignment. Yeah. And girl, I am rage-filled often.
Yeah.
So I'm always like,
helpful
okay,
to know. Yeah.
We're feeling a little angry. Okay, so why don't we go through and give everyone the not self, and then we can talk about how we are authorities.
Okay, cool. Let me talk about reflectors because we haven't talked about them yet. But
sorry. No, did not mean to forget our most rare, precious
reflectors.
Gem.
Yes. 1% of the population, much more rare. These people are amazing. I mean, they all are, but these are people that are really, really powerful mirrors. They kind of take it and amplify the energy that they're around. And so you really get a good sense of like the quality of a space or a team or a community or even a society by the way that person is showing up. And it makes it so important for them to be very ruthless about where they're spending time and who they're spending time with, because they're taking it all in very deeply. These are also people that are very fluid. They might find that different seasons of life, different friends, different friend groups kind of pull out different parts of them. So their job is not to try to be just one thing or be overly consistent, but to honor like whatever feels like them that day or that month or that year, knowing it's always changing. And I would say in the context of business, these are people that are so wise and just have such an objective perspective on like where things are not working and how things could be made better. Whenever I am lucky enough to be around a reflector, I always have a lot of questions for them around how they see the world, because it is fascinating and so useful.
I love that.
To your question around not self, something that's really cool about human design is that it gives us these very simple signals that reveal whether we're on or off track. And it's not to say that we don't all feel these feelings in different ways, but there's often one that just gets to the core of like when something needs to change in our lives. So for generators and manifesting generators, that signal that reveals change is required is frustration. If they like are in a job or in work or ending the day and they're just like resentful about how they're using their energy, it's often a signal to be like, let me just check in and see if this is still the right commitment or if I could engage with it differently. The signal they're on track is satisfied. The way that I describe that is just like the way they use their energy feels like really rewarding. It feels like they've done a thing and they're like, oh God, that felt good to do. And like, I might feel exhausted, but like in the best way. I shared this earlier in our conversation, but I was once at this mastermind with a man named Devin, I'm forgetting his last name. And he was the one that used this term delightfully spent. And I was like, that is the most generator manifesting generator phrase I've ever heard in my entire life. It's just like, how can I just use my energy in a way that feels so rewarding? For projectors, to be off track feels bitter, is bitterness. And that often is rooted in a lack of appreciation, recognition. It's that sense of like, I've got so much to share, nobody's asking. Or I'm like working my booty off and nothing's actually happening. You know, and to be on track is success. And success can be financial, of course, but far more than that, it's rooted in this feeling of like, I feel really recognized and appreciated and valued for all the things that I bring to the table, whether it's in friendship, romantically, or at work. You, our dear manifestor, to be off track is anger. The way that I understand anger, and I'd love to hear your perspective, some things it can be rooted in is like a disempowered feeling. It's like, I don't feel free to do what I want, when I want, how I want. Like, I feel like overly controlled or told what to do. Like, I feel like I have to be always on and available. Whereas to be on track is peace. It's freedom. It's to do what you want, when you want, how you want. And like, I will just say with my little 7-month-old, there's a piece to her at this moment in her life where it feels so good to be around her. It's made me appreciate Manifestor so much because I feel like that piece is like, God, it's like a really nice thing to be around.
When I'm peaceful, it's the best for everybody. But I think growing up, I have 2 siblings and like, I just wanted to be alone in my room all the time. Just like lock the door. I would dance in my room for hours when be left alone. And my brother would just never leave me alone. Recently, I'm realizing I need so much personal space. And that was so not honored when I was a kid. It was like constant people. So I ended up becoming like a little bit of a workaholic and overachiever to get out of the house for a number of reasons. For me, that was a really important thing that I look back and I'm like, that would have been nice to have been honored because the narrative in my family was like, well, why won't you just play with your brother? And it was like, why is my peace and importance of solitude not prioritized in the same way that his needs are prioritized? And that's one of the things for manifestors. The biggest thing you can understand is that we want to show up as our best selves, but to do that, we need to have that respect of like letting us have our time. And because otherwise I have big emotions. I get angry often. The biggest way I get angry is not having my time and space and needs respected. And then the other is what you're talking about is lack of autonomy. Like I feel like I'm not someone, and I can't speak for all manifestors here but I do not have a procrastination problem. I'm not someone who sits here and is like, oh, it's not getting done. So it's like when people try and infringe upon that autonomy, it's the easiest way to light me up or to be not fully heard to, which is a very projector thing. But that's one of the things when I'm talking to people and I'm like, are we speaking the same language? I could not be a clearer communicator and a more direct communicator, very much here to like catalyze. But part of the issue is when you're catalyzing and initiating, not everyone's ready to receive it. So then you're having that dance that can be aggravating as a manifestor.
I just want to highlight something you said, which I think is respect. It's really important for manifestors to feel respected. And I feel like I see that especially in kids. It's interesting hearing you share your experience where it's like having somebody like barge into your room without letting you know they're coming in, or like really asking you to show up for a thing that you just don't have the energy for and aren't available for. It can really aggravate manifestors in a pretty big way. And so I think for them to feel really respected, I think is really important. And I'm seeing that with young kids where I'm just like, it never really feels too early to respect them because like they see so much more than we even realize, you know?
Yeah.
So the final type is a reflector, and their signal that they're off track is disappointment. I often see that show up mostly when they're just trying to be a thing that they're not, trying to subscribe to another way of doing things or how others are doing things. It also can really show up when they're in spaces that don't feel good with people that don't feel good. And I actually love their sign of being on track the most of all, which is surprise. It basically is like marveling at, I don't know, like all the different directions they're pulled in, or the parts of themselves that like want to come out that day. And I tell some fun stories in the book of kind of people just like meeting people in such a surprising way, or a job coming out of nowhere. And like that often is the signal for reflectors that they are moving in the perfect direction for them.
And what this book does so well, because I'm such a sucker for the lived examples, and Erin does such a great job. She breaks down each type. So you'll learn that one of the things I read that you've been sort of speaking about or wanting people to get from the book is that they look up the people in their lives so they can better show up for the people in their lives. That's such a beautiful takeaway, which is not just about understanding yourself, but how do you more deeply understand the people you're in relation with.
Yeah.
We start with the types, and then she moves into authorities, which I'll have her explain here in 1 second. But she has equal parts academic understanding of each thing that you're reading about. And then there's this personal story from someone she's coached or been in, association with that gives you a real life example of how this can apply to your life. And the way that I've contextualized or how I explain it to people, which you might disagree, but my version of this is human design is like Myers-Briggs meets astrology is sort of how I
totally
break it down. And then it goes even deeper. It's way more of a evolved system than most people even realize. When I first learned about it, I think I disappeared for 72 hours and just was in holes reading about everything. It was amazing. See everyone in 5 days. I have some work to do.
It is the biggest rabbit hole of all time. I think that was really important for me, is so often we tell the stories of these systems just through insights. And I feel like sometimes it can be hard to really fully integrate it. And so I think there's something really powerful about hearing it through story. And being like, oh, like this is what it looks like to actually use it. Because I think part of the magic of human design is that it's so practical. Yes, it's mystical. It gives us all this juicy, amazing information about ourselves. And it's paired with all these very practical tools to actually experience tangible change in our lives when we really integrate them in. So one of those pieces is decision making, and that's what we call our authority in human design. There are 7 different authorities, and think of it as the way of accessing your truth and your knowing. There are sacral authorities that, and again, if you look up your chart at humandesignblueprint.com, you'll see this listed underneath type. Sacral authority is all about trusting your gut feeling in the moment. It's like a visceral feeling in your belly that kind of either pulls you toward or pushes you away. As soon as you get a full body gut yes, you can take action. There's no need to wait. If it's anything but that, it's either not the right time or not the right thing. It's funny, I was doing a podcast yesterday with a woman who had this, and she's like, wow, I've been coaching all my clients to trust their instinctual, immediate gut feeling, when that was her authority, but not everybody. Right. So it can be really useful to understand the authority of the people close to us. There are people like you and me that even though we're different types, we both have emotional authorities. So that means that you are somebody who's actually very intuitive. You might have initial instincts about things, but the best strategy for the bigger decisions in your life is to give yourself a day or 2 or 3 to see how that feeling and instinct settles. And for you, often there's this kind of calm, settled, cool feeling that comes when something's right. And so as tempting as it might be to rush or take action, the things to say yes to are the ones that feel good over time. And like I will say personally, I have found this one very annoying. I'm just like, I'd like to take action, I'm good, but I've just had enough experiences that I say yes and regret it the next day, that I just have learned it's always worth the wait.
Yeah, I'm there now. I had enough bad dating experiences to know we're not trusting that initial, because I'll be like with them and it feels good and then it starts to feel bad, but I've sit with it a lot more now.
Yes. Okay. How was it learning that initially?
Well, I'm also unhealthy attachment, so it doesn't help. But when you're unhealthy attachment, I think one of the big things is taking it slow because you don't see things clearly. And I think I've learned to couple that with really asking myself how I feel. Do I feel really seen and heard? Do I like who I am when I'm with them? All that stuff. I used to be in this unhealthy, manic, intense chemistry and just respond to that. And what I've learned over time, right, chemistry is not what we should be fully chasing as mature adults. It's a component, but that's been the big shift. Even if I feel intense initially, is to see how that transmutes. And most of the time now, something presents itself within that period of waiting where it becomes an uninteresting pursuit.
One thing to know about all of our authorities is that it not only lets us know what to pursue, but also when to pursue it. And so I find that giving ourselves a moment, it basically means like the opportunity kind of like disappears or becomes like just uninteresting, or it like gets juicier and better and like richer. And so like I find that time really helps me feel into what direction that is taking me in. The other authorities, there are splenic authorities. These people are meant to be very instinctive, intuitive in the moment. So similar to sacral, but not a gut feeling, not like a visceral feeling in their belly, more like a quiet whisper, a resonance. It's actually an incredibly quiet one, and so it often requires the most effort to tune into it. There are self-projected authorities who are meant to really find their clarity by talking things out and just seeing what truth comes when they say things aloud.
That's one of my best friends. And it
No
was so funny
way.
because we did her chart, not
Yeah.
knowing that. And after we did, I was like, this makes so much sense because she calls me and we talk these things out or we talk ideas and she figures out what she believes or what she decides within those conversations. And it was amazing because we just didn't know. And I looked up, I was like, this makes total sense. I was like, this is exactly how you operate.
So amazing. The story I share in the book is Barbara Streisand. I just love discovering that she was a self-projected projector because like you can even find in her stories there's just like this conviction in her voice that it's just, these people are amazing. But it's important to give themselves that space to freely talk things out without feeling guilt or shame around it because it's how they reach their truth. There are ego authorities that find their truth by committing to things they desire, they want. They like have the fortitude and willpower to make happen. It's really important for them to feel like they're being well taken care of in their decisions because they have so much powerful energy to give, but they've got to feel like they're really receiving well in return. There are mental authorities, which is all about speaking things out with a few different people in a few different spaces and seeing what thread of truth stays true. The story I share in the book is Serena Williams, and she talked about her decision to leave tennis before giving birth to her second child. And it was just so funny hearing her talk about it. She's like, I talked to Venus, I talked to Tiger Woods, I talked to my therapist, and it was just, it's crazy to watch people just like doing it. And then the final one is none, or wait a lunar cycle, which is true for all reflectors. And they are meant to give themselves a full 28 to 30 days before they choose, which can feel a little wild to a lot of us. And yet that is when clarity lands, And so again, so powerful to know the people around you. So you're not thinking that they're waffling when they're actually just going through that journey of accessing their truth.
So after coaching hundreds of thousands of people and doing all these blueprints around the world, do you ever still feel surprise when it comes to people and their charts?
I don't know if I would categorize it as surprise, but I think that I still like love sessions and I've loved all these podcasts and sitting with people because I just feel like I'm always learning new things based on how it's showing up in their lives. Even hearing you talk about being a manifestor child. So I wouldn't say it's surprise, but it's more, I feel like I'm always learning. And that's why the book was so fun is I feel like for so long I learned from books and those were great. And I also feel like in the past many years, I've just been learning through people's lives and that's way more interesting to me. So I feel like I keep expanding because I feel like people's experiences keep teaching me new things about parts of the chart that are so fascinating.
What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned?
Well, I think that the deeper I've gone in this system, the less dogmatic I've become. Earlier on, I was like, this is crazy. This is so useful. Like, this is just changing my life. And it did. I've become much more interested in just sharing it as a cool framework to think about. I feel like I always say what matters most to me is not whether it's true, but whether it's useful. And yeah, I wouldn't be in this if I didn't feel like there was an accuracy to it. It is so crazy when people have experiences like you do, and that's often what I hear. But just like presenting it through that lens of, is this actually useful? That's a question to ask. And I actually had a really interesting experience last week. What was your question, by the way? I'm postpartum, so brain.
What are the greatest lessons you've learned?
Okay, sorry. So the story I was going to share is that I talk a lot about how human design, whether or not you subscribe to the fact that we can learn so much based on our birth information, even if you don't, it can spark a really interesting conversation about who we are and how we choose. And so last week I was in LA recording podcasts. I was with this woman, Gabby Reese. I don't know if you know her, but she was like a really famous volleyball player. She did not know her birth time. And we sat and I was like, okay, well, we don't know your birth time, but let's just have a conversation and see where you fall. And I actually had a very clear idea of who I thought she was. Just by her energy, I thought she'd be a manifestor. And hearing her talk, it was just like she was very clear, like, I'm a manifestor, I'm a splenic authority. And then she had really clear ideas of her two daughters that were with us. And so then I did readings, I just shared the concept with the daughters, and they were like, that's definitely me. We actually never looked up anybody's birth information. And that was kind of the first time that I did it. There were so many revelations and discoveries just based on the conversation. So I think that was actually like, yes, we could look up the birth information and be like, oh, maybe they're not living their design. But I think I was so surprised and just astounded by like, it was still just useful as a conversation piece. Talk about, like one of the dogs were like, oh my God, my new career. She was just so clear. I think we're often living on autopilot. And we just don't take enough time to think back and be like, how do we make decisions? Like, how does our energy move day to day? Like, how do we tend to find opportunities? And I just think human design offers us such a cool framework to think about that. So I would say that's been surprising and fun, and kind of fun to watch that grow. And then I would say the other thing that I don't know if it's surprising, but has been interesting, is that I think it's really easy to use these systems as like an excuse to not do a thing. And I think that,
Oh, interesting.
you know, like, and I've had a lot of people come to me and be like, oh, somebody said I'm a generator and therefore I can't do this. Somebody said I'm a projector and therefore I can't work on this job. What's been really important for me to remind people of is just like human design is not here to tell us what we can or cannot do or who we can be with, but it lets us know how we can do that thing best, how we can best be with the people that we choose, you know? And so like, I just also keep an eye on when people are using it as an excuse. I've done the same where I'm like, oh, I'm a projector, I can't reach out to anybody. And it's like, nobody knows you exist. So you're gonna have to find some way to get the word out there. I also think that it's important to really use these systems in ways that empower and not disempower.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's been a big part of what I feel like my role is here to remind people of.
With most methodologies, it's a tool, and different tools work for different people.
Yeah.
And you find the tool that most resonates with you. And that's so much of what we do in this podcast, is expose people to different ways of thinking to build new blueprints for their life. This is a great example. Most people are living their design intuitively. Most people have an understanding of who they are meant to be and how they're meant to work. And for me, I knew that I really wasn't a corporate employee. I really didn't want to be an entrepreneur. Like, that's the truth. I was like, this feels harder. This feels just like more scary, less stable. And reading my chart was an affirmation of what I knew to be true about myself that I was sort of reticent to do. And so I think that's really what it does, is like when we said earlier at the beginning of the talk was permission.
Yeah.
It's really affirming what you know about yourself, which you probably know already.
You do. Oh my God. I think that's why human design makes sense to people, and often to the most skeptical people, because it just gives them a language for things they already know. Like, I feel like I'm so rarely telling them anything new. It's either really affirming because they're like, thank you for giving language to the thing I already know, or it's really confronting where it's like, I know that and I've been resisting it really hard. I talked to somebody the other day who was really not into human design. He made me laugh so hard. I was like, what don't you love about human design? He's like, it's just so obviously I am those things. And I was like, I love it. For him, he was just like, I'm living it. Like, I don't need somebody to remind me of it because I've already figured that out. I've been doing this work for a long time. It tends to give us a framework for things we already know, but sometimes haven't yet given ourselves permission to step into.
Yeah, I refer back. I go back a lot. So just to give people a deeper overview here,
Yeah.
when you go to Erin's site and get your personal chart, you're going to see this. It's called a body graph, and you're going to see these centers and these lines. And so these lines are called gates, and some of them are conscious or unconscious. And then you have these centers in your body. Some of them will be fixed and some of them will be open.
Mm-hmm.
I know the basics of my human design, but I constantly go back and look at my gates because I cannot remember them all. Yeah. And so that's like what's fun about it. I feel like it's a lifelong study, and I'm sure it must be fun for you because everyone's unique, so it never gets boring.
It never gets boring. And you're also going to love a new thing that we're building, which is very much around the gates. It never gets boring. And I think that's the magic of human design, that everyone's chart is really different. It's not like I look up a chart and I'm like, oh, I saw that one last week. You know, even so, it'd be still interesting to be like, how do they express it? But every combination is so unique. Like, one of our core offerings is basically this kind of custom guide to your design. It doesn't go into every part of the chart, but there are 400,000 versions just of that guide. It is just so crazy how specific and hyper-personalized it gets.
That's why I love it. It feels very like everything else. It feels more nebulous, I guess. Even astrology, houses represent certain things, but it's like less, it feels a little bit less accurate. And then you're like, oh yeah, these are fully things that I know about myself, or can now be like, oh, this makes sense. Or maybe this is why I'm feeling resistance here. Or how do I move like with more ease throughout my life? And I've gone back at times of strife. And for example, I'm a 3/5, which we can talk about what that is. But I am literally here to experiment and have things not work, then to dispel wisdom, to talk about how they work. Can I tell you how annoying that is? To have to do things 8 times because they don't work. And then be like, this time I finally figured it out.
And do you feel like it was helpful to have like human design remind you of that?
Yeah. Because that, and then my crosses. Can you just give a 2-liner for the cross? I don't even know how to explain this. I just know what they are.
So, well, first the profile, which Denise was talking about, there are 12 of them. And they basically give us like this amazing information around like purpose and career, but also around relationship needs. And so anyone with a 3, like the example that she was giving, is very much like here to learn through trial and error and experimentation and getting their hands dirty. And so it can feel annoying because like they might feel like there's a lot of mess or failure or mistakes, but the core lesson here is that everything that doesn't work brings you closer to what does. And so how can you treat each experience as an opportunity to learn? And I find that these are the most resilient people ever. The incarnation crosses, there are 192 of them, and they basically speak to our grander purpose. You know, they are not pieces of our design that are super actionable. It's not like you learn your incarnation cross and you're like, aha, I know what to do. The rest of your design gives you that, but it more is a real reflection of like whether you're on track. Like my incarnation cross is so much around teaching and sharing and also saying the same thing over and over and over again, which is very much the journey that I'm on and promoting this book. But like, that's just how I do it. It comes out differently every time. But for me, reading that incarnation cross is like, oh yeah, I'm on the right track right now.
Does it annoy you to ever have to repeat so much?
It doesn't. I feel like people assume that it does.
I love that. It would annoy me.
But I will say something that's been the most fun with this book is I found the way that I've talked about human design has really changed in a way that it was really different than a year ago or 2 or 5. It actually has felt novel being on all these podcasts now. I think you're my like 77th.
Oh my God.
I know. But it's been fun because it's just like everyone is a little bit different. And I think that it's fun to tell the story of human design through stories.
Mm-hmm. It really is. Your cross, I'm going back to that. Mine is the cross of consciousness.
How do you experience that?
It feels accurate. I think a lot about purpose. I think a lot about living this one life and what am I here to do and how am I creating impact and how am I making the most of my time here. When I read that, it once again gave me permission to lean into the side of me that really cares about creating enduring change and shift, and knowing that it was a part of my design. It no longer felt like something that I'm passionate about that lives over here.
Yeah.
It was like, oh no, that's a really major part of you that you need to honor. And like my startup, for example, was very much centered on creating enduring change, creating more inclusion and more space for more voices. And having it not work, one of the takeaways I had was it was adjacent to purpose. I was so lit up on the dream of it and telling that story, but in actuality, I hate building technology. The process of that is not for me. Like the project never ends. You have technical debt. It's exhausting. And I was like, oh, I really fell in love with this because of the vision I saw of how to change the world, more so than the company. And that was something that I had to process afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the incarnation cross is a really cool lens through which to look at things we're doing and just assess them.
What would you tell someone who's reticent to investigate their chart?
Well, I think if your curiosity feels at all piqued, I would just trust that. If you're like, God, I don't want to do this, then obviously don't. But I would say come at it through the lens of, again, what matters most is not whether it's true, but whether it's useful. Take each piece and ask yourself, like, does this feel useful? I think that I would encourage you taking it slow. There's a lot of information you can go and do, and there's no need to integrate it all at once. I see people come in, they're like, I've got to learn every single gate immediately, and then it gets them very in their head, and they don't end up integrating the most essential parts of their chart, which is why that's what the book is focused on. I will say that the people that I find tend to love the system the most are the ones that are the most skeptical at first. And they just are like, I don't like this woo-woo stuff. And then they're just like, this is undeniable that this is helping me understand my day-to-day flow and find opportunities in a smoother way and better relate to my kids and my partners. And so like, I need to know everything about it. So I would take it one piece at a time and I would focus on the usefulness piece. And if it is checking that box, then keep digging.
And I think your book is a very good primer for people that want to start somewhere. And then if it resonates, it can go obviously a lot deeper as we've described in this episode. That's what's so great about your book. It felt really accessible.
Yeah.
Because the system can feel overwhelming.
So overwhelming.
Yeah.
I know.
I think that's a lot of people's reaction is like, well, what do all these things mean? And to start from a place where like, let's start here. And then you can deepen your understanding. Yes,
exactly. I mean, there were like 150 pages that I just never even included in the book. And obviously which was heartbreaking as an author. But but at a certain point, it's like, it can be really overwhelming. I think that know that even just integrating the most essential pieces can make the biggest difference in your life.
Not that you want to think about book 2 right now, but obviously.
I know. I remember one like section, I was like, "What do I do with these open centers?" And they're like, "It's the next book." I was like, "Don't even talk to me about that." I like have to
I
write this
actually
one.
think, as we're talking, as a manifestor, I think you have a book on human design and parenting.
It'd be so fun. I have received that. I've received that feedback before from my favorite intuitive. Honestly, what would be so fun is just interviewing lots of parents. Like even hearing you talk about being a manifestor child, I'm like, God, I have so many questions about what it was like to be a manifestor child. So I think that I'm into that.
I was reflecting when I was reading your book about that and knowing that you have a manifestor baby.
I know.
I was like, and just seeing like my friends all have kids now and thinking about, oh, what an opportunity
Yeah,
this
cool
is to show
idea.
up differently and to understand your kids in such a different, more intimate way and just be more specialized, right? Your kids show you who they are, but if things about them that you can then continue to affirm, then they're going to grow up in a world in which they don't need the chart to affirm it because you've already done it.
Oh my God, I love it. Look at you, manifestor, initiating me into another thing. You're
The
watching
last
human design
thing.
in action, y'all. Manifestor initiating a projector who needs to be invited.
I mean, girl, this is my favorite. This was
We're
like my
doing
favorite
it.
thing to do. It's
Yeah.
just like I just want everyone to live their ultimate dreams and everyone to feel seen and heard and loved. Like this is really what I'm trying to do is just create a world in which people feel really deeply seen and heard.
I love that so much.
So I'm just curious because selfishly I have you here.
Yeah.
When you pulled up my chart, is there anything you think that I need to know about myself?
Honestly, the first thing that comes up, the first thing that comes up is around you were sharing with the audience around there are some charts that are colored in that are a little more fixed, and those are kind of areas that you like walk into a room and like that's felt. It's the energy that pours out of you, and there are also areas where you're a little bit more sensitive to other people. You and I actually have identical charts in that way. We have the same two open centers. But I think that like I'm curious for you, there's a lot of definition in your chart. Meaning there's a lot of ways in your world where you're very much like, this is how I am, this is how I operate. It doesn't mean you can't evolve, but it's not being really lost in everyone else's way. It's like being really rooted in yours. So I guess I'm curious like how you experience that. Do you feel that kind of very natural fixedness of like, this is who I am and this is how I do things?
I do. What was interesting about the past couple years being in this deep rest cycle, it was the first time in my entire life that I'd ever felt unclear or like lost. And it was a very important thing to experience. I learned a lot. But
Yeah.
my whole life, I've always felt very clear. And when I say clear, it's in the moment I felt very clear. There was a lot of stuff healing wise that I did that like in retrospect, right? Like I was moving out of more of a surviving self at the time. I just thought this was the next benchmark where after I healed it, I was like, well, we don't need to like live in a toxic hustle culture and those kinds of things. But I never had this moment of like, what's next or I can't figure it out. I always just knew the next step. And then my open centers have to do with like how much work is enough or self-worth. And that is stuff that I found more through my healing journey. But being unclear was very destabilizing for me.
Yeah. There's like such a rootedness in your design of like, this is who I am. Again, that can keep changing, but I imagine not feeling anchored in that can be hard. And I think the other thing that comes up, you got one of a channel that I love. This is actually your only conscious channel. Or no, wait. Yeah. Around the channel of feelings. It's an unconscious channel. But it basically means that you are somebody who's meant to be quite moody in that you have like high highs and low lows, and there's just like a depth of your emotions. And like we talked about manifestors being very impactful in their words, but I would say that's probably on another level with you. Like you're really here kind of like move people and touch people and like make them feel. But a key lesson for you is doing it when you're in the mood, like when you've waited to be clear and you're in the mood, like your words can transform people. But if you're not in the mood, that's also felt sometimes in a negative way. There's a big lesson for you around just honoring the moods, like not in the mood to go on a date, not going on a date, not in the mood to do a thing, like not doing it, you know? And obviously there are limits to the places that you can honor that. I highly recommend honoring it wherever you can.
That was one of the big lessons, like having zero energy, nothing to give, and feeling very just lost. I just didn't do what I didn't have the energy for. And it was now, I don't know, maybe you experience this too. I guess it's the open sacral, but it's like
Yeah.
when I'm in certain work situations, I just get flown into like the vibe and I ride that vibe for a while and I'm in it. And what I've realized now that I've structured my life differently and changed how I work is that I can do that for a short period of time, but then I know and I feel when it's time to stop. Whereas in the past, I did not know when it was time to stop.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, great. I get to come back home to my home and my sanctuary and not see anyone or do anything for 48 hours.
So important for you.
Do you feel that way about feeling fixed in your centers? Have you felt the same thing?
Yeah, I think that I definitely can sometimes see it come through as stubbornness. I can feel like sometimes it's just like, this is the way, you know? So like, I feel like I
Yes.
actually am learning a little bit more flexibility. So I
Yes.
think that's probably where it's challenging for me in terms of just being like, I have a way, and I actually know that it's not always the best way, you know? So really, I think like adapting to all the ways is a little bit less natural. And so I feel like that's something that I've had to put in a little bit more work around.
I'm sure motherhood helps with that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My rigidness, yeah.
I always wonder, because I don't have kids, like, how does your energy deal with being a mother as a projector?
It was a little bit easier with one than two. I have a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old. I think that it is one, I feel like, I don't know about other parents out here, but there was so much that I couldn't imagine before becoming a mother. Before becoming a mother, I would like get not enough sleep and I would be like a total wreck. And now like not getting enough sleep is the default. And so like I've had to learn to engage with my current energy. I think it's amazing as a projector. It's actually made me so much more aware of my projector energy. Like it's had to make me so much more efficient and so much more, my rest periods are far shorter than they used to be, but they're also more meaningful. It's like I need 5 minutes, you know, to myself. I need 5 minutes on the bathroom floor, or 5 minutes to whatever. So I think that I am more aware than ever of like how much I need a space and a moment to myself. As a projector, it's interesting. It's like, you know, honoring the ebbs and flows is not always easy when you're responsible for like 2 really enthusiastic children. So like sometimes it's me lying on the floor as my manifesting generator like runs circles around me, and like that works too, you know? So just kind of
You have
like,
a man gen and a manifestor.
oh yeah,
Oh, you're in for it.
I know. And my man gen has 8 out of the 9 centers defined.
I love
So
it though. How
I'm
fun.
obsessed. I know. And my husband's a generator. So we have 4 of the 5 types represented in our little home. Um,
Maybe you have to
so
have one more child.
I know. I'm like, are we going to have a reflector? Back to your point on parenting, I think what is so cool to me about being a projector mother with these kiddos is like, I just have no expectation that they'll be like anything like me. So I'm walking
Yeah.
into this journey being like, who are they? They are probably not going to want the things that I want. And I'm just like already seeing how different they are from me and how different they are from each other. So I don't know. It's been like such a fun discovery, you know? But yeah, it's a real trip.
I know. They're very lucky to have you.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. All that you want is your parents just to see you as you are,
Yeah.
not. And so you're already doing that. So they're
Trying
blessed.
my best. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we go, can you just tell everyone where they can purchase the book, where they can come do their chart?
Yeah. So the book is called How Do You Choose? A Human Design Guide to What's Best for You at Work and Love and in Life. It's really meant to explore the practical applications, how you can actually use this system in your daily life. You can buy that anywhere books are sold. I also sell these hyper-personalized guides about your design, which are also really great ways to dive into all the most important pieces. Those are available at humandesignblueprint.com/guide, and you can use the discount code too much. And then on Instagram, I'm at Erin Claire Jones and Human Design Blueprint.
We will have everything in the show notes for you. And please get Erin's book. It's really an amazing book. Even if you're a master at human design or more like me, you know a little bit, you still learn so much from all the personal stories. So it's such a fun read. Thank you for putting your time and heart into it.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for reading it.
Thank you so much for listening. If you do like listening, it would mean the world to us if you could subscribe or review the podcast anywhere that you watch or listen to the podcast. It really helps with the algorithm to share this with the world. I want to give a special thank you to Young Spielberg and Sarah Yarkin for their beautiful work on our opening jingle, Dana Boulos for her help with the beautiful art, and to all of you for tuning in and keeping this dream alive. If you want to hear certain topics or from certain guests, please feel free to email us. We really, really want to hear from you and see how we can best support you. See you next time.